My name is Evan Calloway. I'm 29 years old. Get out. I'm done paying for another man's mistake. My father said that on my 18th birthday and threw a $50 bill at my chest like he was settling a tab. It hit the floor between us. My grandmother was sitting on the couch. My younger brother stood on the stairs. 6 relatives were at the kitchen table, pretending not to hear the sentence that split the room in half. I picked up the bill, folded it once, then twice. I kept it for 11 years. I carried a sealed envelope with me. Through community college, through night classes, through double shifts at the warehouse, through every Thanksgiving I wasn't invited to. Inside that envelope was one piece of paper that could have ended everything the day I got it. I never opened it in front of him, not because I was scared, because I was waiting. 6 months ago, at his 60th birthday party, in front of 80 guests, under string lights, in the backyard of the house I grew up in. I finally did. When he saw what was inside and who was standing at the gate, his face turned a shade of gray I didn't know living skin could become. Before I take you there, do me one favor. If this story hits something in you, like it, subscribe, drop your city and your local time in the comments. I read every single one. Now let me take you back to a Saturday morning in April, the day my mother's brother showed up with a duffel bag and said 2 words that changed my life. You're coming. My mother's name was Elena Calloway. She was the only reason our house ever felt like a home instead of a construction site with furniture in it. She had a quiet way of stepping between me and my father, without making it look like she was stepping between me and my father. A hand on my shoulder when his voice sharpened. A question tossed into the air when his eyes went cold. She could redirect a storm without anyone noticing she'd moved the wind. While she was alive, my father kept the mask on. He wasn't affectionate with me the way he was with my younger brother, Caleb, but he wasn't openly cruel either. With Caleb, there were shoulder squeezes, baseball practice, hardware store Saturdays. With me, there was distance. Not violent, not loud, just absent. Like I was renting space in his house instead of belonging to it. Then my mother got sick. Ovarian cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months. She lasted 14. 14 Tuesdays. 14 grocery lists. 14 more mornings of pretending everything would be normal again. She fought like someone trying to hold the door open with her body. When she died, something in the house shifted. Not loudly, just permanently. The week after the funeral, I heard the first crack in my father's voice. He was on the phone in the kitchen. I was sitting halfway up the staircase where the steps creak if you move too fast. He didn't know I was there. He doesn't look like anyone in this family, he said. A pause. I've had doubts for years. I was 10. I didn't understand the mechanics of what he was implying, but I understood the tone. It was the tone of someone washing their hands. After that, the small things started. Caleb got new clothes every August. I wore what still fit. Caleb kept the bedroom with the working heat vent. I moved to the one above the garage where winter came through the floorboards. My grandmother would visit on Sundays. She'd press a folded 20 into my palm when no one was looking, hold my face a little too long. Her fingers trembled like she was trying to say something she didn't know how to speak. It would take me almost 20 years to understand what that tremor meant, and what she'd been afraid to admit. By 14, the difference between Caleb and me wasn't subtle anymore. It was structural. Caleb got a brand new mountain bike for his 12th birthday. Matte black, 21 gears, helmet to match. My father assembled it in the driveway like he was building something sacred. Neighbors walked by and complimented it. My father stood a little taller each time. That same summer, I asked for $40 to buy a used chemistry textbook. He didn't look up from the television. Ask your real father. The words didn't echo. They just landed. Heavy. Final. Caleb froze on the other side of the room. He was 12. Even he knew the sentence didn't belong in the air like that. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. He went back to his phone. He never defended me. He never agreed either. Silence was safer. By 15, I had a job washing dishes at Marino's Diner 3 blocks from our house. $7 an hour in cash. I'd finish school, bike there, and work until close, and eat whatever the cook was about to throw out. That was dinner most nights. Caleb went to travel baseball camp that year. 2 weeks out of state. $400 plus gear. My father drove him himself. Loaded the truck with new cleats and a duffel bag that cost more than everything in my closet combined. I stayed home, worked doubles, Bought my own school supplies. There's a specific education that comes with being the invisible child. You learn how to need less. You learn that asking costs more than it's worth. You learn that silence isn't peace. It's just the sound of everyone agreeing you don't matter. My grandmother still came every Sunday. Still slipped me money. But now when she looked at me, her eyes carried something else. Not pity. Guilt. She would grip my shoulder and say, "You're a good boy. Evan, don't you forget that." She said it like an apology. At 16, I got promoted to closing shift at the diner. At 17, I started taking night classes at the community college. I paid for my own application fees, my own books, my own bus pass. Caleb didn't need a job. My father told him to focus on legacy. That word again. Legacy. It was always about bloodlines. Carrying the name, the business, the house. And every time my father looked at me, I could see the calculation behind his eyes. Was I proof of something, or was I a reminder? By the time I turned 18, I understood one thing clearly. My father didn't hate me because I was weak. He hated me because every time he looked at my face, he saw someone he'd wronged. And I was the evidence walking around breathing in his house. The day I turned 18, I baked my own cake. Box mix. Vanilla. 2 eggs. Oil instead of butter, because that's what we had. I mixed it in a scratched metal bowl while Caleb was out with friends and my father was finishing a plumbing job across town. I wasn't expecting balloons, or a banner, or even a card. I just wanted to blow out one candle in the house I grew up in before it stopped being mine. I set the cake on the kitchen counter at 6:12 p.m. One single candle in the center. Lit it with a match from the junk drawer. The flame flickered in the quiet like it wasn't sure it belonged there. The back door opened. Work boots first. Then the heavy tread of someone who owned the ground he walked on. My father stepped into the kitchen. Saw the cake. Saw the candle. Saw me standing there alone. He didn't ask what I was doing. He didn't say happy birthday. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a $50 bill, tossed it onto the counter. "Happy 18, he said flatly. Then the sentence he'd been rehearsing for years. "Get out. I'm done paying for another man's mistake." The bill slid across the counter and stopped against the edge of the cake box. From the living room, I heard the couch cushion shift. My grandmother had been sitting there. I felt her presence like heat behind a wall. Caleb was halfway down the stairs. His hand tightened on the railing. His jaw moved like he might speak. He didn't. Nobody did. The candle was still burning. I picked up the 50, folded it once, then again, slipped it into my back pocket. I leaned forward and blew out the candle. Smoke curled upward and disappeared. I didn't argue, didn't plead. I walked to the hallway phone and called my uncle. He answered on the second ring. "Yeah, it's me," I said. "He wants me out." 40 minutes later, his blue pickup idled in the driveway. I walked out of that house with one trash bag of clothes and a pair of shoes that didn't fit right. I didn't look back, but standing on that porch, I made a promise. One day, he would understand exactly what he threw away, and it would be too late. My uncle's name is Daniel Ruiz. Most people call him Dan. I call him the reason I didn't fold. He lived above his auto repair shop on Kellner Road, a 2-bedroom apartment with water stains on the ceiling and a kitchen so narrow you had to step sideways to open the refrigerator. When I got there that first night, he had already cleared out a storage room, twin mattress, folded quilt, lamp on a crate. "You're home now," he said, standing in the doorway, like that was the only explanation required. He never asked what happened, never asked what my father said, never said my father's name at all. Breakfast was at 7 a.m. sharp. 2 eggs, toast, black coffee. He left a plate on the table, whether I showed up or not. The first week, I barely spoke. I went to school, picked up shifts at the diner, came back and did homework at the small desk he'd wedged against the wall. He didn't pry. He just showed up. One night, about a month in, I found a bronze sobriety chip in his nightstand while looking for a pin. 3 years sober. Dated the year my mother died. He never told me that story. I never asked, but I understood what it meant. He had his own ghosts. He just didn't make me carry them. He paid my application fee when I enrolled full-time at community college. Didn't make a speech about it. Just left the receipt on the counter with a nod. When I failed my first math midterm, he didn't say, "You'll get it next time." He said, "Study again." You're not quitting. It wasn't loud support. It was steady. And steady is what saves you. By 19, I realized something simple. DNA says who created you. Consistency says who raised you. Daniel Ruiz didn't share my last name, didn't owe me anything, but he chose to show up every single day after a man who did share my blood decided I wasn't worth the cost. And sometimes the difference between father and dad is just a decision. He made his. Every morning at 7 a.m., leaving my father's house didn't end the story. It just changed the address. Within a month of moving in with Dan, I started noticing something strange. Silence. I called Aunt Rebecca voicemail, texted cousin Marcus left on read, sent my grandmother a birthday card no reply. At first, I thought it was awkwardness. Divorce by rumor. Families don't like picking sides. Then, one night, while Dan was wiping grease off his hands with a shop rag, he said it. Your dad's been making calls. My stomach dropped. He's telling people your mom admitted something before she died. Dan continued, saying she confessed you weren't his. The room went very quiet. That's not true. I said, I know it's not. Then why does everyone believe him? Dan leaned back against the counter. Because he's been planting that doubt for years. And your mom isn't here to correct it. That was the part that hit hardest. Not that my father lied. He'd been lying my entire life. It was that he used my mother's death as evidence. Turned her hospital bed into a courtroom. Turned her silence into testimony. If I stayed quiet, the lie would calcify. It wouldn't just erase me. It would erase her. Her reputation. Her loyalty. The kind of woman she was. That's when the motivation shifted. It wasn't about proving I belonged in his house. It was about protecting my mother's name. My father made one mistake. He told the story to too many people, including someone who had been in that hospital room every single day. 3 years after I left, I was halfway through my nursing prerequisites when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Evan, this is Clara Benton, my mother's best friend. I heard what your father's been saying, she said. Her voice was tight, controlled. About your mom confessing. She didn't. I said, I was there. Clara replied. She talked about you, about Caleb, about making sure you boys were okay. She never once mentioned infidelity. There was a pause. Then she said something that shifted the ground under me. Your mother didn't have a secret, Evan, but your father did. The air in my kitchen changed. What do you mean? When your mom was pregnant with you? Clara said quietly. She started suspecting he was seeing someone else. The floor didn't tilt. It clarified. If anyone had reason to question loyalty, Clara continued, it wasn't him. Then she said the sentence that would eventually lead to the envelope. Science doesn't lie. You just need a sample. That was the moment hurt became purpose. And purpose is far more dangerous than pain. I didn't act right away. Not because I was afraid. Because I needed to be sure I wasn't doing it for the wrong reason. I wasn't trying to win him back. I wasn't trying to prove I deserved love. I was trying to protect my mother's name. That distinction mattered. The opportunity came on Thanksgiving. I was 22, finishing my final semester of nursing school. Caleb called me out of nowhere first time in almost 4 years. Dad's going to the game at noon, he said. Come by for coffee. Just 30 minutes. I drove Dan's truck back to Maple Drive. The neighborhood looked frozen in time. Same dented mailbox. Same cracked sidewalk. Caleb met me at the back door. We sat at the kitchen table like strangers, rehearsing normalcy. Instant coffee. Small talk. Clinical rotations. Weather. Then the front door opened. My father stepped inside. He saw me. His expression didn't flare. It tightened. What are you doing here? Caleb invited me. I said, Caleb doesn't make decisions in my house. Caleb stood up. It's Thanksgiving. She's not family. He corrected himself mid-sentence. He's not family. There it was again. Clean. Surgical. Not new. But at 22, it didn't crush me. It clarified me. I stood up, reached for my jacket, and on my way out, I picked up his coffee mug from the counter. Still warm. A faint rim where he'd taken a sip. I slipped it into my coat pocket. Caleb followed me outside. I'm sorry, he said. And for once, I believed him. 4 weeks later, the lab envelope arrived. Plain white. No drama. I opened it at Dan's kitchen table on a Tuesday morning before my shift. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. I unfolded the paper. Paternity index 8,746,209 1-to-1. Probability of paternity. 99.998% Daniel Calloway is the biological father of Evan Calloway. I didn't move for a long time. I had expected it. Clara's voice. My mother's character. The math of it. But seeing it printed in black ink with a case number and a verification line is different than suspecting. I cried. Not because I was relieved. Because 22 years of being treated like an intruder had been built on a lie he needed to believe. He didn't hate me because I wasn't his. He hated me because I was. Dan came home at 6 and found me still at the table. He read the results. Set the paper down. I always knew, he said. Mom told you. She told me she never betrayed him. That was enough. I put the DNA results into a new envelope. Wrote my father's name across the front. Mailed it the next morning. 2 weeks later. It came back. Stamped in red, returned to sender unopened. He didn't even look. I placed the returned envelope in my nightstand drawer. And that's when the envelope stopped being proof and started becoming a weapon. 6 months before my father's 60th birthday, my grandmother died. Margaret Calloway, 82. Congestive heart failure. She went in her sleep, which was the gentlest exit anyone in that house had ever been given. I didn't attend the funeral. Caleb called the night before and said it would cause tension. That word again. Tension. Like truth was static in the wires. 3 weeks later, I got a call from a downtown law office. Mr. Calloway, this is Patricia Lang from Lang & Rowe. Your grandmother left something for you. Not money. Not property. An envelope. Sealed. Notarized. With specific written instructions to be delivered to Evan Calloway after my passing. I went during my lunch break. Scrubs under a jacket, hands still smelling faintly of antiseptic. Mrs. Lang slid the envelope across her polished desk. Your grandmother arranged this 8 months ago, she said. She was very clear about timing. The envelope was thick. The handwriting on the front trembled slightly, but the strokes were deliberate. I didn't open it in the office. I opened it in my truck. Engine off, parked in the underground garage. Inside were 3 pages of blue ink handwriting torn from a spiral notebook. She started with an apology. Not vague. Specific. She wrote that she had known the truth for nearly 30 years. She had caught my father with a woman named Karen Mitchell behind the VFW hall on Route 12 October. 6 months before I was born. My mother had been 7 months pregnant. She described the truck, the time of night, the perfume vanilla and something floral. Not my mother's. She confronted him. He begged her to stay quiet. She did, because he was her son, and she was afraid of losing him. She wrote that she chose her son over the truth and spent the rest of her life watching what that silence cost. The second page listed dates, details, locations no one could fabricate. The third page was the one that hollowed me out. Evan, you were always my grandson. You were always Daniel's son. Your mother never betrayed anyone. My son did, and I helped him hide it by staying silent. I do not deserve forgiveness, but you deserve the truth. At the bottom was her signature. Underneath it, a notary stamp. Mrs. Lang had witnessed it herself. I sat in that parking garage and read it 3 times. The DNA results were in my nightstand drawer at home. Now this. The full picture came into focus. My father didn't despise me because I wasn't his. He despised me because every time he looked at my face, he saw my mother and remembered what he had done to her. I wasn't the evidence of her betrayal. I was the evidence of his. That realization didn't feel like victory. It felt like gravity. Everything made sense in a way that removed every excuse. My grandmother had known. She had watched me grow up in a house that doubted me. She had slipped $20 bills into my palm. She had squeezed my shoulder too tightly, and she had said nothing. Because fear is quiet, but guilt is patient. I drove straight to Clara's house that evening. She finally told you. Clara said before I finished the sentence. You knew she knew your mom suspected. Clara replied. She thought Margaret had seen something, but she didn't want to break the family. Break the family. As if it hadn't already been fractured from the inside. That night, I placed my grandmother's letter into the same envelope as the DNA results. 2 documents. 2 confirmations. 1 truth. I sealed it again. And for the first time in 11 years, I wasn't carrying doubt. I was carrying a verdict. And I knew exactly when I would open it. My father's 60th birthday party was held in the backyard of the house on Maple Drive. 80 guests. String lights zigzagging over the lawn. Folding tables. A Bluetooth speaker playing country music too loud. A sheet cake with happy 60th. Daniel piped and blew frosting. I parked 2 houses down. Dan's truck was already there. He didn't get out, just leaned against the driver's door. Arms crossed. Steady, if it goes bad, he said. I'm right here. It had been 11 years since he picked me up with a trash bag of clothes. He was still parked outside. I walked through the gate. Conversations dipped when people saw me. Not dramatically, just enough to register. Caleb met me halfway across the yard. He looked older than 30. Tired. Thanks for coming, he said quietly. I'm here for you, I replied. For the first hour, my father ignored me. He worked the crowd like he always did. Handshake, laugh, clap on the back. The self-made man, the provider, the devoted father. At 7, someone tapped the glass. The music lowered. My father stepped to the microphone set up near the cake table. 60 years, he said. Built from nothing. Applause. He talked about work, sacrifice, legacy. Then he called Caleb up. This is my boy, he said, gripping his shoulder. My only boy. My legacy. The word hung there. Only, not oldest. Not one of my sons. Only. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Then he did what he'd been planning. Some of you know, he continued, voice lowering just enough to pull the yard in closer. My first wife made choices I had to live with. A pause. I kept my mouth shut out of respect. But tonight, I'm making something official. He looked directly at me. This house, this business, everything I built goes to Caleb. Because family means blood. Real blood. Scattered applause. Hesitant. Then cousin Marcus, standing near the cooler, asked the question no one else would. What about Evan? The microphone caught the silence that followed. My father smiled. Evan's here as a guest tonight, he said, not as my son. The yard went still. He looked straight at me. I stayed quiet for years out of respect for his mother's memory. He continued, but since he's here, everyone deserves the truth. A breath. He was never mine. There it was. Rehearsed. Polished. Final. 80 pairs of eyes landed on me. Clara Benton reached over and pressed her hand against my arm. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped the stone patio. I didn't rush. Didn't raise my voice. Can I have 60 seconds, I asked. My father smirked. Go ahead. Won't change the facts. I opened my bag. Pulled out the envelope. The same envelope he'd returned unopened years ago. 7 years ago. I said clearly. I mailed this to you. You sent it back without opening it. Murmurs moved through the crowd. I broke the seal. Removed the first document. This is a certified DNA test conducted by Midstate Genomics Laboratory. I read it word for word. Probability of paternity 99. By Joshua. Daniel Calloway is the biological father of Evan Calloway. Silence. Not empty silence. Heavy silence. The kind that rearranges reality. My father's face drained. That's fake, he said flatly. Lab name and case number are printed at the bottom. I replied. Anyone here can verify it. Marcus stepped forward and took the paper. Read it carefully. It's legitimate, he said. My father's jaw tightened. This proves nothing, he muttered. I unfolded the second document. This is a notarized letter from Margaret Calloway, written 3 months before she died. Something flickered across his face. Fear. I read 2 sentences. I caught my son with a woman named Karen Mitchell 6 months before Evan was born. Marissa never cheated. My son did. I stayed silent because I was afraid. Gasps. Chairs shifting. Someone swore under their breath. Clara stood up. I was there when Marissa suspected, she said loudly. She never betrayed him. Ever. Caleb stepped away from our father. Dad, he said quietly. Is it true for a moment? I thought he might confess. He didn't. He looked at the ground. That was enough. Because silence. At the right moment. Is admission. My father slammed his hand against the table. This is my birthday, he shouted. You planned this. You planned it. I replied evenly. I just brought documentation. He scanned the yard for support. Found none. One of his crew members set his plate down and walked toward the gate. A woman from church covered her mouth. Marcus folded his arms. The foundation was cracking. Then I said the final piece. You always wanted to know who my real father is. His head snapped up. He's outside. I pointed toward the street. Through the gate. Under the elm tree. Stood Dan. arms crossed, watching, not dramatic, just present. He taught me to drive. I continued. He paid for school. He showed up every day you didn't. I placed the documents on the table. DNA says you're my father, I said calmly. But he's my dad. I didn't wait for a response. Didn't shout. Didn't cry. I picked up my bag and walked toward the gate. Behind me, chairs scraped. Conversations fractured. Someone called my name. Caleb didn't. He just stood there, looking at a man he no longer recognized. Dan opened the passenger door before I reached the truck. We drove away in silence. 2 blocks later, he asked, "You okay?" I stared out the window. "I'm done," I said, and for the first time in 11 years. I meant it. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It leaked, quiet, steady, irreversible. Within 2 weeks of the party, 3 men from my father's plumbing crew quit. One of them, Dennis, had worked beside him for over a decade. He'd known my mother, attended her funeral. Caleb told me what Dennis said on his way out. "I can't work for a man who'd do that to his own kid." The crew dropped from 6 to 3 overnight. A commercial contract with a property management company didn't renew. They cited staffing instability. In a town like ours, instability travels faster than truth ever did. Grace Hill Community Church adjusted next. My father had been a deacon there for 15 years. Not paid, but visible. He read scripture on Sundays, organized food drives, stood in the lobby shaking hands. The Sunday after the party, his name wasn't in the bulletin. A woman named Linda read scripture instead. No announcement. No confrontation. Just absence. Neighbors shifted too. One afternoon, the Hendersons, who had lived next door to us since before I was born, brought a tin of cookies to Dan's shop. "For Evan, Mrs. Henderson said softly. Marissa was the kindest woman on this street. We should have said something sooner." Dan set the tin on the counter that night. I ate 2 cookies in silence. Kindness hits different when it arrives late. Marcus posted a single sentence on Facebook. Truth has a way of finding daylight. He didn't tag anyone. He didn't have to. The comments filled in the blanks. I heard through Caleb that my father didn't leave the house for nearly 2 weeks. He wasn't bankrupt. He wasn't arrested. He wasn't publicly dragged. He was just alone. And for a man who built his identity on control and image, isolation is louder than punishment. About a month after the party, Caleb showed up at Dan's shop with an envelope, my name written across it in block letters. I opened it at the counter while Dan pretended not to watch. "See sentence. Evan, things got out of hand. I made mistakes. The house is still your home if you want it. Come back so we can talk. Dad." I read it twice, looking for one word. Sorry? It wasn't there. No acknowledgement of the lie. No mention of Karen. No ownership of the public disowning. Just mistakes. Floating. Undefined. As if gravity itself had slipped. As if I had simply wandered too far and could return. I folded the letter. Placed it in the same drawer as the returned envelope. Closed it. Dan finally looked up. "You good with that? I will be," I said. And I meant it. Because justice doesn't always need a courtroom. Sometimes it just needs witnesses. And this time, there had been 80 of them. Caleb came to my apartment for the first time a week after the letter. He stood in the doorway like he wasn't sure he deserved to be inside. He brought an ultrasound photo, black and white, grainy, a curved shape like a comma floating in static. "Jenny's due in 4 months," he said. His voice didn't carry the same certainty it used to. "It's a girl." I took the photo carefully, like it might bruise. "Have you picked a name?" He swallowed. "Marlena?" My hand tightened around the edge of the image. "Does he know?" I asked. "Yeah." "What did he say?" Caleb looked down at his shoes. "Nothing." That silence again. Only this time. It didn't protect him. It exposed him. We stood in my kitchen for a long moment. 2 men raised in the same house, but shaped by different versions of it. "I should have said something," Caleb said finally. "When he said those things, when you were a kid, I knew it was wrong." "I know," I replied. And I did. He had been 12, then 15, then 20, raised inside a structure built on compliance. Silence had kept him safe. But now he had a daughter coming, and silence would cost him something else. 2 months later, I was in the hospital waiting room at 3:47 inches the morning. Nursing scrubs still on for my shift. Coffee gone cold beside me. Caleb came through the double doors. Eyes red. smiling in a way that cracked something open in his face. "You want to hold her?" he asked. I held my niece. 7 pounds. 4 ounces. Dark hair like mine. Like my mother's. Jenny was exhausted but radiant. Clara was there with flowers. Aunt Rebecca brought a crocheted blanket. For a few minutes, we were the kind of family my mother would have recognized. Caleb stood beside the hospital bed and looked at his daughter like he was rewriting something inside himself. "I won't do that to her," he said quietly. "Do what was done to you?" I nodded. That was enough. Because generational trauma doesn't end with apologies. It ends with decisions. And Caleb had just made one. Next month, I turned 30. I'm baking my own cake again. But this time, it won't be in a kitchen where I'm counting footsteps. It'll be in Dan's apartment above the shop. The same narrow space that held me together when I was 18 and carrying everything I couldn't say out loud. The $50 bill is still framed on my wall. Cheap black frame from a dollar store. Nothing fancy. I don't keep it out of anger. I keep it as evidence. That was the price he put on me. $50. For 18 years of a son. For birthdays missed. For words said. For lies repeated. He thought that bill was a dismissal. It became a reminder. Blood doesn't earn trust. Behavior does. My mother ran out of time before she could defend herself. My grandmother knew the truth for 3 decades and was too afraid to speak it. Caleb loved me, but didn't find his voice until the house was already cracking. Dan had no obligation. No DNA. No legal paperwork. Just a spare room and a decision. Show up or don't. He showed up. Every morning at 7. Every hard exam. Every quiet breakdown I pretended wasn't happening. The DNA test didn't set me free. Choosing to stop defending myself to someone committed to misunderstanding me that set me free. Setting a boundary isn't revenge. It's clarity. If you have someone in your life who keeps rewriting your worth, hear this. You are not required to audition for love. And you are not obligated to stay in a room where your existence is debated. My name is Evan Calloway. I am my father's son, just not the father who tried to erase me. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment and tell me what boundary did you finally set. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. There's a whole playlist waiting for you. And thank you genuinely for listening. This content is created by the Boundaries and Bloodlines team for entertainment purposes only. Do not replicate actions from this story in real life under any circumstances.